All right, everyone. We do have a diplomatic incident here, and I've spoken about it a couple of weeks ago when the latest individual got jailed in the Turks and Caicos. It's a British possession, an island, well, two islands in the Caribbean, popular tourist destination, and it has extreme anti-gunnery because it's an attaché of Britainstan, and so it's even more onerous than the UK itself. They've decided they don't want any weapons on the island so that the people there can be more effectively slaves. Very common in tin horn countries around the world and the tin horn territories of those tin horn countries, of which the UK, Britainstan, has devolved into. Link in the description, archived of course. You'll know, I wonder if anyone else has noticed this. If an American gets jailed in Belarus or Russia or a place like that, Biden comes out swinging right away and says, come on, man, give us our citizens back, especially if it's a basketball star, Brittany Griner, who brought a bunch of narcotics into Russia, knowing full well that that was not allowed, but apparently oblivious to the fact that vaping products are still considered under their laws there, then got traded for, a major Russian arms dealer. That was a totally fair trade, by the way. There are still several Americans languishing in Russia right now. I noticed that Biden hasn't prioritized them as much as the basketball player. I wonder why. And now governors have to step up, because Joe Biden is not attempting to influence the Turks and Caicos to release the 5 Americans that they've got in custody there for the sin of having a small amount of ammunition accidentally in their bags when they were trying to physically leave the Turks and Caicos. So imagine this. The fundamental concept is, well, we're restricting severely the availability of weapons and ammo on this island because we don't want violence. We don't want anyone to go on a spree. If a person is about to leave your shitty island, do you believe that there is actually a threat to your public there in the Turks and Caicos? No reasonable person would possibly consider that a threat. None of these people had firearms. There's a letter now that's been sent out by the governors of Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Oklahoma. Their citizens are jailed there, asking for their release. Well, that's interesting. The governors are now having to conduct international diplomacy. I thought that was Biden's job as chief diplomat. Shouldn't there be some diplomatic group that gets sent down there to lobby for their release? I know that there's a lot of lobbying and trading of prisoners and shit when it's Russia, but when it's ostensibly the territory of an allied nation, one of our closest allies, the UK and its diaspora and commonwealth, it's one of our key allies in the whole fucking world. They're going to jail people for mandatory minimum 12 years, which they changed the law not that many moons ago, by the way. Originally, there was discretion. Now it's a mandatory minimum sentence, felony sentence, under laws that don't exist in the U.S. No violence was committed. All of these people maintain it was accidental. All of them were attempting to physically leave your territory when they were charged. Where's the legitimate crime? It makes absolutely no sense. And to see that governors have to step up to the plate for Americans because the federal government's not willing to do so, probably because it involves ammunition, and Biden's an anti-gunner, so he doesn't want to get his hands dirty petitioning for their release because he hates guns too and wishes that we had Turks and Caicos style anti-gunnery in the United States. Thankfully, that will never happen, although he would want it, along with all of the other usual gang of idiots within the administration, including many Republican unipartists. Cornyn, Romney, and the others, not exactly puristic on the Second Amendment. You're telling me that American citizens now who go abroad, unless it's Russia, I suppose, or Belarus, they have to rely upon their governor to be up at bat for them? That makes me feel really great. I guess I can't go to the Turks and Caicos because should anything go wrong, I have to rely on Phil Scott to be the one to write the letter. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he'd say, ha ha ha, yeah, fuck you, Sticks. Yeah, you want to insult me in my governorship? Haha, no letter for you. These governors actually trying to get something done. They shouldn't have to, though. The Biden administration, the second that latest story broke, should have raised the issue diplomatically with the UK's government and said, can you lean on your vassal over there to change their law and add discretion when no other crime has been committed? Maybe minor sentence or a fine, or maybe you just can't go to the Turks and Caicos for the next 10 years or something. You're in exile. You're not allowed to go to this one specific couple of Caribbean islands. Boo fucking who? Yeah, Bermuda doesn't exist. Yeah, the Bahamas don't exist. The Florida Keys don't exist. Puerto Rico doesn't exist. All of the Lesser Antilles, they don't exist at all. Barbados and all, Trinidad and Tobago. There's plenty of islands in the Caribbean to go to. There's plenty of tropical islands all over the world. South Pacific, Again, Bermuda and places like that. All sorts of wonderful places. Indonesia, I mean, it's basically just a bunch of islands anyway. There's plenty of volcanoes and some cannibalism there, but if you can navigate around that and you don't wander into the middle of Borneo and get your arms ripped off by an orangutan, you should be okay. By the way, Indonesian food really yummy and prevalent in the Netherlands. Of course, they were part of the Dutch Empire at one point. And but governors are the ones that have to do this? Governors, normally they manage state ties. If there's any international diplomacy, it's like a sister city thing or a business deal. Like I remember when Vermont was selling cows to Fidel Castro back in the day. We sold a bunch of dairy cattle to the Cubans and took a lot of rigmarole with the federal government to let them do that. I think that was under the Clinton administration, if I remember correctly. Or was it Bush? Can't remember whether it was late 90s or in the 2000s. I can't remember. Or in New York, bought a bunch of oil from Venezuela. Back when that seemed to make sense. I noticed they're not doing that as much anymore. Youngkin and these other governors should not have to go to bat for the citizens of their states. The federal government predominantly is responsible for international diplomacy, but there's no attempt being made. Again, if an American is jailed in Moscow or St. Petersburg, it becomes a big deal. Biden releases a statement, especially if that person is woke, and tries to get him back, even swapping extremely dangerous arms dealers and smugglers and stuff to the Russians for fucking basketball players. But if some unassuming regular middle-class dad with a bunch of kids and a wife left in the United States without them is facing a 12-year sentence for having a fucking bullet in their luggage that they quite clearly didn't intend to do any harm with because they didn't even have a firearm, they did nothing while they were there. They were literally about to leave and they say, whoop, whoop, oh, you've got a 22 round in here. Clearly, you're about to massacre people. Yeah, you're about to get on the plane to go back to the United States, but we consider you a threat. And we modified our law a few months ago. Enjoy 12 years in prison. You're telling me that governors are the ones that have to step up to bat? I would think that Joe Biden, at the very least, could write them a letter, say something, make one conference, send Blinken over to visit in London. You know, he'll like that. He can hire an underage prostitute, and then he can come back and say that he did his job for the day. You know, he can go to the Curry Mile, and he can find plenty of people in his age range that he would prefer, and he's probably into that sort of thing. Governors shouldn't be the ones doing this. And by the way, there's disproportionate amounts of diplomatic leverage for governors. It depends, number one, on the trade that the state would have with a territory or whatever, and the prestige of the office, or even a mayor or something like that. You know, Ron DeSantis is going to have more diplomatic leverage dealing with a foreign country in an unofficial manner than the governor than Kristi Noem would have, or Phil Scott, or Chris Sununu, because Florida is a big state with a larger economy and therefore a lot more output. There's tourism and stuff like that. Also proximity in the case of a state like Florida. Hopefully the authorities there see the light and release these people. They did nothing legitimately wrong in a retroactively applied proactively changed law that makes no sense anyway. Before you could get away with it with a fine, assuming that you didn't do anything else wrong. So you didn't whip out a gun, start threatening people in the Turks and Caicos. That's different. But you just accidentally brought a couple of hunting bullets, your 223s or whatever, and now you're facing 12 years, and there's a mandatory minimum sentencing guideline here for these cases. These are just regular average Joes. These are regular fathers who are being imprisoned on this island for absolutely no reason, under conditions that I can't imagine are necessarily up to par either. You know, prison on a tropical island may sound better than prison in, St. Petersburg, but it's probably worse, actually, with the humidity and stuff. I hope they have a good AC system in their jail cell. That's about all. Peace out.